Happy Halloween from the beat. And if it is the end of October, then November is here and it is for contenders. And if it's the end of a week, well, that means it's a Freaky Friday in time for some bold predictions as Ohio State gets ready for Penn State at noon in the Horseshoe on Saturday. Welcome to the Austin Birm Show. I am Austin Ward. He is Jeremy Birm, I'm told.
Yeah. Hey, whatever works. You can call me whenever. You can call me Betty, or Betty, you can call me Al. I don't care.
Okay. Well, I'm going to call you Birm, but he is Jeremy Birmingham, and we have a lot of thoughts on what is going to happen for the number one Buckeyes as they look to stay unbeaten against a team that doesn't yet have a Big Ten victory this season.
Or a Power 4 victory.
Oh, that's true. That is quite the struggle. Not the way that this matchup was supposed to go, and it is clocking in right now. It's fluctuating between 20.5 and 21 points as we record right now to get ready, and the point spread and the over-under is at 44.5. So as we do, before we get in to the drill down, got to give some score predictions and what we think might happen on Saturday with that total.
Yeah, it's so weird, man. Like, you look at this Penn State team and you talk about it, and they haven't beaten a Power 4 team, and they fired their coach, and they lost their starting quarterback, their star quarterback, the guy in all the commercials. They're without their starting middle linebacker, the best, the leader of that defense. They've lost 4 games in a row. You think they're going to stink, but like, they've lost 4 games in a row by a total of 13 points. And now, obviously, 2 of those games were to UCLA and Northwestern. Those aren't teams you can really ever excuse a loss to. Going into Iowa City with a first-time starter at quarterback and having a lead in the fourth quarter, and you lose the game by a point. But you look at this team and you don't really know why they're this bad. But you also, there's no reason to be like expecting them to turn around and fix it. So it's just the closer we get to Saturday, the weirder this game feels to me. Not because I think Ohio State's going to lose, but like, I know Penn State's going to come out with their hair on fire. I know they're going to come out with some wrinkles that Ohio State hasn't seen. They got the week off. They have a chance to build in some new stuff into the offense. I talked to Sonny Styles about that on Wednesday night a little bit. And, he's talking about expecting a lot more wildcat, expecting maybe 2 running backs in the backfield, expecting more end arounds, jet sweeps, stuff like that to Trevor Pena, the wide receiver from Syracuse. So the Buckeyes are like aware that this Penn State team, while being in the midst of a pretty embarrassing 4-game slide, it's not a bad team. But I also think that Ohio State, if the Buckeyes can just maintain their defensive integrity and keep Katron Allen from having the type of day he had against Penn State, or against Iowa, which was not spectacular. It was 28 carries, 145 yards. It's a pretty good afternoon or evening of work for a running back in the Big Ten. But if you don't let Penn State put together drives in the first and second quarter where it's 4 or 5 first downs in a row, I don't see how Penn State can win this game. So I said on Monday that my score prediction was 31-10. I'm going to stick that, but I'm going to alter it, just skew it in 1 point and say 31-11, because I think when Penn State scores a touchdown early, they're going to go for 2 in an attempt to put Ohio State on its back foot, and I think they'll get it, and I think it will be a 31-11 final as Ohio State pulls away in the third and fourth quarter.
That's a super early drill down, because is that a first quarter touchdown, a second quarter touchdown?
I think it's a first quarter touchdown. I really think that Penn State they're going to scheme up some stuff, and their scripted plays are going to be difficult, and Ohio State not knowing what to expect. I wouldn't be surprised if Penn State scores on their first drive and doesn't score a touchdown the rest of the game.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me either. And we've seen Matt Patricia already adjust pretty quickly. He's had, I think, a lot of these games, Ohio State has really suffocated and dominated from start to finish with that defense. But like, there were opportunities there where you could see, Washington was able to find some success, and that was going to force an adjustment. They got caught off guard by not a lot. I mean, that's overly nitpicky. Like, there have been drives, but they've happened in the first half, and then it's been choked out. The only real successful stint that existed in the second half all season, unless I'm mistaken, Birm, was Illinois going tempo and being desperate at the same time that Ohio State took its foot off the pedal.
Yeah, but that happened in the first half too. I mean, that happened in the last 4 minutes of the first half. And again, I don't know that that's a concern in this game, because there's no world in which Ethan Grunkmeyer has the ability to run an offense in the way that Luke Altmaier did.
Yeah, no chance whatsoever of that in his second career start. And he had some issues there against Iowa, a couple interceptions. You look at the numbers, I mean, 15 completions for, I believe, 95 yards. Clearly, Penn State doesn't trust him to do a whole lot, and I don't know why they would expect him to be able to do that against Matt Patricia and the variety of schemes and coverages and different looks that he's going to face in the horseshoe on Saturday. So, if you're going to be that one-dimensional, and I think that dimension is pretty good with Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, and whether that's Wildcat, whether that's two backs or whatever else that Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs and Matt Patricia and that whole group is preparing for, if it involves and revolves around the rushing attack, you cannot beat Ohio State that way, period. That's not going to change. So they're going to have to be able to throw the football, and I don't believe they will. Now, the only thing I really hate to bring this up, but you're talking about envisioning a path to victory.
I think that's important.
This game is like identical to the blueprint that was required last November in the game. That's the only way. And that was also contingent on Ohio State making a bunch of mistakes, dealing with some injuries, missing field goals. Like, the path was exceedingly narrow, and Ohio State walked right down it and through it and into it, and it cost himself the game. And even when it comes to the strength of the Penn State defense compared to where Michigan was a year ago, that's going to be in the trenches. So I don't bring that up I don't want to talk about it, and it's not to put salt in anybody's wounds, but it is why I think Ohio State has been on alert the way that they have been for the last 2 weeks about this game and the talent level that they're facing, because Penn State can run the football, and Jim Knowles does have a defense that could be able to take some things away from Ohio State, especially if they are intent on running the football, or at least in the way that they did against Michigan last November. So, I'm in this position now, and it used to give me a lot of guff for it over the years, that I couldn't envision a scenario where Ohio State was going to lose to Michigan. Now I got the losing streak. I know that I've always bet routinely against James Franklin, but now I have this, I've built up these coverage scars. It's like, I know what the path is that Penn State could win this game with. I just don't think that Ryan Day is going to allow it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that it's going to be a Ryan Day decision. That's ultimately what it comes down to. I mean, I think that the path for Penn State is to get Ohio State off the field quickly and to hold on to the football. And so if the Buckeyes can't run the ball, if the Buckeyes struggle in the trenches early and aren't able to win at the point of attack with the defensive tackles of their own, if Caden McDonald is neutralized or double teamed, and then you're required to lean on Tywone Malone or Edric Houston to be the run stuffer, and then you force Sonny Styles to be in the middle, and you open up the middle of the field for the tight end, which is tight end Penn State's always good at. There's little things, but I think that Michigan game was instructive in so many ways, because heading into that week, like there's no way Michigan can win unless this exact script happens. And then that exact script happened. And so, like, you can't completely dismiss it. You can't ignore it. You can't say it can't happen, because we all watched it happen 12 months or 11 months ago. So, but the question is, what did Ryan Day learn? What did the Buckeyes learn? What did they learn from themselves at Wisconsin when they came out and said, hey, if we want to just throw the ball all day, we can. Now, that's the interesting thing about Penn State to me. And we'll talk about that as we get into these predictions, because Penn State's defense, which, there's been so much discussion about how long it takes to really get acclimated to the Jim Knowles system and the 3-year thing. We spent a lot of time in the offseason talking about whether Penn State would basically like be on a curve because they had so many veterans on their defense that maybe it's easy for veterans to learn. Clearly, that's not the case, because they have struggled mightily at times to stop anybody. Penn State, I think, is number 29 in the country in total defense. It's not a bad defense by any stretch, but the things that you expect from Penn State have not been what has occurred this season. And I think we can, lean into that when we start this first bold P with mine, which is that I think Penn State right now is number 5 in the country in giving up passing yards per game. The most yardage they've given up in a single game this year to a receiver is 93. That is to, I think, Griffin Wild from Northwestern. Jacorian Moore, the freshman standout for Oregon, had 89 yards. So Penn State is only giving up 153 yards a game through the air. I think Carnell Tate is going to have more than that by himself on Saturday. I believe
you like
Jim
that
Knowles,
stat I gave you on Thursday, don't you?
I believe that Jim Knowles, as a guy who understands he has to take away Ohio State's best option, which is obviously Jeremiah Smith. And it's like saying, well, you took away my Ferrari, so I have to drive the Lamborghini. But I think with Carnell Tate, if he gets one-on-one coverage, especially AJ Harris or whatever side of the field that Penn State decides to play him against. I just don't think that they can stop him. Ohio State is going to have an opportunity to throw the ball. Dante Moore threw for about 250 against Penn State. That was the most they've given up in a game. But the interesting thing here is that how does Ohio State approach this? Because Penn State is actually number 98 in the country against the rush, which is surprising to me. I mean, as I was looking over stuff on Thursday morning, like I would have never guessed that. They're giving up 175 yards a game on the ground. And so for an Ohio State team that is trying really hard to like find its run game and find success in the run game, and you have 5 weeks to prepare for the Michigan game and the slog fest that might be, like, I wonder how much of Ryan Day, Brian Hartline, and these guys are going into this game saying this is the time we can really work on this. Because if they are, then to the point we just made, that plays right into Penn State's hands to me. And because the Ohio State offense on the ground has been inefficient, if you have back-to-back 3-and-outs in the first quarter and Penn State gets 4 first downs, the quarter's over. So like you can't allow yourself to look too deep at Penn State stats, and you just have to look at the matchups. And if the weather is what it's supposed to be, it's seeming like 55, sunny, 10-mile-an-hour winds, like I think you got to let it rip a little bit. And I think Carnell Tate is going to have 160 plus and 2 touchdowns by himself on Saturday. So I think you're looking at a guy who's up for a big day.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And I think that it can also spill over, as you mentioned, Jim Knowles is going to try to take away Jeremiah Smith. And I know it's not as easy as, okay, well, now you also have to worry about Carnell Tate. You're going to put another body over there. You can't do that. I mean, that would be foolish. But I do think that there will be times where maybe the double coverage or, the shade in the secondary flips and Jim Knowles tries to confuse and give Julian Sayin different looks. And on this play, Carnell's taken away. And on that play, it's Jeremiah. We'll see if that winds up being the case. Either way, there should be a lot of potential one-on-one matchups for Brandon Ennis in the slot. And you and I both talked to Brandon Ennis coming off of the practice field on Wednesday night in the Woody. And you kind of wanted to validate a conversation, right? About if there was confidence that touchdown, what that meant for him.
Yeah.
And I was like, I know you don't need that for yourself. And I don't even really think, honestly, that the rest of the team needs to see Brandon Ennis do it to have that confidence in him, because they voted him a captain. They see why he has that role week in and week out. But it's not that he needs to elevate above Carnell Tate or Jeremiah Smith. Like, that's not needed for this team.
Yeah.
But having the option where you could rotate either Max Clare or Brandon Ennis in the slot and get different things or accomplish different threats to a secondary and force Jim Knowles and Penn State to adjust their personnel and the way that they want to try to defend Ohio State is important. And so I whether they all want to admit it or not, when you score a touchdown like Brandon Ennis caught, when you throw a touchdown like Julian Sayin did to him, that's going to stick in the memory bank. And that had not really happened that much throughout this season. We all know that. And we've talked about when that's going to happen or if that's going to happen for Brandon Ennis, or even we spent during the off week talking about Quincy Porter and if his rise or Mylan Graham's rise could force or allow Carnell Tate or Jeremiah Smith to play more in the slot. Ohio State has a really good slot weapon. It's just not something that they have actually needed to dip into all that much. And maybe they won't have to on against Penn State. But I think that there will be enough opportunities for him, just like there was a year ago in Happy Valley where Brandon Ennis scored a critical touchdown for Ohio State. So I think he's going to score again. I don't think it's going to be a ton of targets. I don't think it's going to be a massive workload, because I agree with you. It's an important word. It's a massive word, in fact. But I think he's going to have 4 catches, 3 first downs, and a touchdown. And maybe that only accounts for 55 yards, but in a game that I think, and I didn't squeeze it in there, is going to be 31-6, every touchdown will be important.
Yeah, and we talked so much about the failure of being one-dimensional and the weakness of being one-dimensional. And that's not just for an offense, that's for individual players. Brandon Ennis wants to prove that he can be a regular route running, go down the field wide receiver. That's who he wants to be. That's who he knows he is. If he wants to play in the NFL, you can't just say, well, I'm a gadget guy. I'm the slot guy who can only run 4-yard routes. Like, Brandon Ennis wants to prove to people that he is a full-time, big-time wide receiver. And that's what I wanted to ask him on Wednesday night when we saw him. It's like, how important was it for you to remind not yourself, but like the world and the Ohio State coaching staff that, hey, you can put me on the outside. You can move JJ and Carnell into the slot with me on the field, and I can still do those things. and Brandon obviously is one of the more confident and competitive people in the program, and he wants that opportunity, and he's not shying away from the challenges that this season have presented him. He knows that he can do a better job in the punt return game. He knows he can do a better job when he's got the ball in his hands. But as far as just being able to get downfield and get open, like I've never really understood the notion that a guy like Brandon Inniss can only get open 4 yards away from the line of scrimmage. You know what I mean? Like, if he can get open 4 yards down the field, he could probably get open 15 yards down the field. So,
well, especially if you're putting a linebacker or a safety on him.
Yeah, exactly. And which is what teams have to do because the Ohio State offense requires it. So I think that there's an opportunity for Brandon to continue to grow into his role this year. And, we're always going to talk about the up and comers. We're always going to talk about the Quincy Porters and Mylon Grahams of the world. But a lot of that is future forward facing. It's not really like to say Brandon Inniss can't be the guy. And I know that the Twitter sphere, the Ohio State, fringe fan base wants Brandon Inniss off the field. And I think that some of his lack of productivity is just a lack of opportunity, and that's what happens.
I'm glad you said that, Birm, because when we talk about the pace that Ohio State is playing at, and again, like Brandon Inniss is not on pace to catch 40 balls from the slot. Ohio State is not playing at a pace that allows that. That applies to the running backs with the number of carries they're going to get. And it applies to Max Clare and Brandon Inniss. Like Ohio State has made this conscious effort. And the person who is going to be quote unquote victimized the most when it comes to touches and receptions and opportunities is going to be Brandon Inniss because he's the third wide receiver and Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate are on this team. So if you only have 60 touches available to you in a game, how many do you want to take away from Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate just to prove to anybody out there that Brandon Inniss can do it, or that production could be like, if that was an emphasis and an important thing, a cog in the Ohio State offense to make sure that all three of them got the same amount of touches, they would do that. That's not the role Brandon Inniss plays for this team, and it is not the offense that Ohio State and Ryan Day have chosen to deploy.
So let's break down this BP. 4 catches would be a career high for Brandon Inniss in a game. I think that's reasonable. His career long in a game, obviously, was the Purdue game last year where he had the long touchdown.
I don't think it'll be a long.
I'm sorry. His long touchdown was 2023. That was a 58-yard. His only catch of the year against Purdue in 2023. That was the touchdown. Career high in catches is 4. Career high in yards is 58. That was the freshman. All
right. Well, I'll give him 59. Then I'll bump it up.
So a twofer in the career highs for Brandon Inniss in this game is what you're saying.
That's right. That's what I'm going with. And
that's right.
That's absolutely correct, partner. So Lorenzo Styles will be back for Ohio State. This is not an emergency role. He is full go on Saturday against Penn State, and you're diving right back in.
I just, again, the way Penn State is going to have to try to matriculate the ball down the field is going to be short passes. It's going to be misdirection. It's going to be wide receiver screens. It's going to be tunnel screens, stuff like that. It's going to be bubble screens. It's going to be halfback screens. It's going to be tight end screens. And guess who the guy in the middle is with all those things?
Lorenzo Styles.
Number 3. I know, again, similar to Brandon Inniss, the discussion about Lorenzo Styles on the internet is not always positive. I find myself agreeing more with the conversation about Brandon Inniss than I do with Lorenzo Styles, because I think he's been pretty sensational this season for Ohio State. He is as reliable a tackler as you can find in the slot. Again, one play against Ohio, notwithstanding, but that wasn't in the slot. That was down the field. That's not where the bread is really buttered. So good job by Ohio for putting him in a position where he had to cover somebody 30 yards down the field, because that's not where his money is going to be made. Lorenzo is a really good player in the slot. He's a really good player up near the line of scrimmage. He's going to have an opportunity on Saturday to make a lot of plays. As long as that shoulder holds up, I think you're going to see him make an impact. I'm going to go 7+ tackles for Lorenzo Styles in this game and an interception return for a touchdown for Ohio State, because I see Ethan Grunkmeyer maybe not seeing him on one of those plays, one of those bubble screens, one of those quick wide receiver screens, and Lorenzo jumping it. He's a guy that's played wide receiver. He understands what it looks like when those plays are developing, and he's got the speed to take it to the house. So I'm thinking there's going to be a Lorenzo Styles return game here. And so the Buckeyes defense, which a lot of questions in the last 2 weeks, like what's the best alignment of this defense? What's the best total package for this defense. Ryan Day left no doubt about that to me on Tuesday when he said that Jermaine is better when Lorenzo's out there, and just like Jalen McClain is better when Caleb Downs is out there. Like we say it all the time. Ryan Day doesn't say things on accident. Lorenzo Styles is going to start. He is going to play the majority of the meaningful reps, and he's going to make an impact. 7+ tackles, interception return for a touchdown for Lorenzo.
He is really effective at reading some of those wide receiver screens, bubble screens, and just firing on it and reading and reacting. He plays very physically, and I know that the criticism is out there, and the memory of the deep ball against Ohio exists. We're now looking at a year and a half's body of work, and that's the only time over that stretch where Lorenzo Styles has let one get over his head, and then he simply didn't make the tackle after that.
Yeah.
That's the fact that we're still talking about it a month and a half later tells you how little there is to actually criticize with Lorenzo Styles and this defense as a whole. Like, that's nitpicking from something that happened in the non-conference slate a month and a half ago, and we're into November, and he came back and was healthy and effective until the shoulder injury slowed him down.
I'm so mad at myself, for those watching on YouTube or 10 TV Plus, that I missed the opportunity to put Nittany picking as the title for this Lorenzo Styles slide, because it makes perfect sense.
I thought
we talk all the time about our nitpicking, and here's a guy who's going to be doing Nittany picking on Saturday, and I missed it.
I thought you were going to call it Zovember.
Oh my gosh, I'm 0 for 2.
I didn't really intend for this to work this way, but I picked Brandon Inniss, who had a big play in Happy Valley in the critical win over Penn State on the way to the national championship a year ago. And IGB's interception in that game, Davison Igbinosun, was one of the more sensational individual efforts on defense I think that you're ever going to see. And
most important last year.
And absolutely pivotal in the win, in the momentum, what that did to deflate the crowd. Because virtually everyone there in white was under the impression that was a touchdown. A lot of the people in the press box, I distinctly remember it. Like, what are they reviewing here? Aren't they going to kick the extra point? And I was like, I'm pretty sure that Davison Igbinosun intercepted that ball. And lo and behold, he did. Needed to, on the heels of a penalty. We've talked about the highs and lows and the risk reward with Davison Igbinosun, and I'll knock on my desk right here. He's been very, very productive and efficient at avoiding penalties this year. He's still playing very physically, but not past the letter of the law in most cases. And I think that, look, Ethan Grunkmeyer, if I'm correct, that Penn State is not going to be able to just go run the football with Katron Allen and Nick Singleton directly into the teeth of the Ohio State defense, and they find that there is no successful route to throwing the bubble screens and the wide receivers and tunnels and all those things that you mentioned, Berm, they're going to have to take one or two shots. And I think that Penn State will regret it, because Davison Igbinosun has been waiting, starving to feast on an interception and take one back to the house. And I think that is going to happen on Saturday. Got a Davison Igbinosun pick six.
The entire BIA thing and all these guys, the discussion in the last few weeks about Jim Knowles and the lack of relationships that players had with him. I mean, you remember I put it on the cover of Thursday's edition of The Beat, but it was back in January or early February, right after Jim Knowles was announced at Penn State, Devin Sanchez retweeting the Penn State introductory post with just November 1st on it. Like these guys in the secondary are wearing this game a little different. Like, there's a little bit of bitterness there, more so. The secondary is always the emotional guys, or the trash talkers, and we know that. But you see the way Sonny Styles deflects things, or Caleb Downs deflects things, or even Kenyatta Jackson or the defensive line was like, yeah, well, it is what it is. But the defensive backs it's funny because corner is supposed to be the short memory position, but all these dudes are like really holding on to some grudges. So I think Davison, who's played sensational this year, is certainly a guy that is in a position to make some plays, because, again, Penn State doesn't have a lot of deep weapons, but if they're going to try to have any success or open up the run game for Katron Allen, you're going to need to soften the middle of that Buckeye defense, and that means some shots. And Davison's been as good as anybody in the country covering it this year.
I think you have to have that short memory that you mentioned at corner, but you also have to have an ability to find motivation, because if you're not going to dwell on every play, you're going to have a long memory for perceived slights and that Michael Jordan iPad. It's like, I took that personally. I think IGB and Jermaine Matthews, like, I know that they had a ton of headbutting opportunities back and forth, and pushed and challenged each other, and came out for the better for it at the end of last year. But I bet that Jermaine feels a type of way as well about Jim Knowles being in a different color on Saturday at the Horseshoe. Drew Aller, I don't think would be in any better shape to go play this secondary on Saturday. Is my point.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, Jermaine was one of those guys. He's a hard on his sleeve type of guy, and if you think back to last year and players that seemed to have a better connection with Jim Knowles, he was one of them, I think.
Yeah. But not without friction.
Yeah, I mean, there's always friction when you're dealing with cornerbacks. That's what they do. That's how they want it. So we'll see. It should be a very interesting game for Ethan Gronkmeyer. Again, I believe Ethan Gronkmeyer is going to be a really decent college quarterback down the road. I don't know that that's going to get put on display this week. And if it does, then Penn State will win the game. But if it doesn't, he's going to probably have a game that he'll want to forget.
Yeah, I think that's correct. What is this? Special teams?
Ohio State's going to make a 50-yard field goal in this game.
Oh, my.
I think it's time. I think it's time for Jaden Fielding to get this monkey off his back. And he hasn't made a 50-yard field goal in his time at Ohio State. He continues to be inconsistent, kicking inside of the horseshoe. This weekend, you got a nice breeze, 10 to 15 miles an hour. Maybe you get a little wind at your back, and I think it's time for him to make one. And I don't know when it happens. I think Ohio State knows that they're going to need their field goal kicker to win a national championship at some point in this season. And so why not Saturday? Why not Saturday for Jaden Fielding? Prove me wrong. That's all I'm saying. Like, I know I've been hard on Jaden. I've been hard on the kicking game. But he's still the kicker. Ohio State has not gone out there and made a change. They've not put Jackson Corville out there and said, let's have an open competition. They believe in Jaden. He's making 80% of his kicks through his career. It just seems like the ones that are at home, the ones that are against the bigger opponents are the ones that he misses. And we'll see how that goes on Saturday. But, I obviously hope Ohio State doesn't need to kick a field goal of any length. But if they do, I have a feeling Jaden Fielding is making that one this week. And I don't know why. And I know it's a cheap BP, but I think that there's a more of a need for him to make that 50-yard field goal than I think there ever should be, but that's what it is.
Actually, I mean, if you're talking about winning a national championship and then the elements are removed, I'm not sure that I have that much skepticism about Jaden Fielding's ability to do it. On Saturday, if it is breezy in the horseshoe where he seems to have some sort of, I don't know, mental block going on about.
He's mentioned it before that the wind there swirls and it's hard to get a little bit of a read on where things are, but like sometimes just kick the damn ball,
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a fine approach and maybe one that needs to be taken. I'm not trying to talk you out of it. It makes it even spicier, maybe too much spice in the pepper to think that tomorrow would be the actual day that happens. Like if you said he's going to make a big kick in a playoff game, maybe in Phoenix, where you were used to live, I'm told, I'd be like, yeah, I can see that. Like that makes a lot of sense to me, or at least I can talk myself into it. Against Penn State, or maybe in the big house at the end of November, I'd be like, I'm going to have to be convinced still.
The confidence that he needs is right there in a 51-yard field goal. Like that's all the confidence you need. One time, do it once, see it go through the hoop. Do that once, and all of a sudden you're going to see a kicker who takes on a totally different vibe.
How much harder would it be to make field goals if they had to kick it through a hoop?
I mean, that actually, I believe, and we'll just take a detour here. I don't think that in the NFL that you should be allowed to kick a field goal under 40 yards anymore. Like I think that should be illegal.
Uh-huh.
That said,
if
you put targets inside of the end zone, then I would approve of under 40-yard field goals being kicked in the NFL. If it's like one spot is like 5 points, one part is 2, I think like the throwing competitions that you see in like the skills competitions, if you did that with the kickers, then I'm on board with that. But I don't think you should be allowed. And I think in college, I don't think you should be allowed to kick a field goal under 25 yards. I don't think it should be allowed.
Okay. I mean, I think they should just put up the rings like it's a Quidditch pitch. I think that worked just fine for the Wizards and Warlocks of the world, but we'll see.
You just spent a lot of time at Disney, didn't you?
Well, Harry Potter World is at Universal.
What?
So,
I don't know anything about this. There's 3 things I don't know anything about: Disney, wrestling, and kicking.
Yeah.
kick the ball.
You keep trying to pretend like you don't know something about wrestling.
Just give Jaden the shot. He's going to make it on Saturday. And if he makes it on Saturday, it removes the doubt and the pressure and the weight off of his shoulders the rest of the season. So give it a shot.
What are your thoughts on Joe Hendry?
What position does he play?
Yeah. Nice fake out. Nice try, buddy.
He's there. He's everywhere. That's not Joe Hendry. Who's that?
Just say his name and he'll appear. And you know that better than anybody. Don't pretend otherwise.
Isn't that Roy Kent?
No. I'll get us back on track maybe with the last bold prediction as we get ready for Ohio State and Penn State. And I've asked 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't know, maybe every week about what's going on at right guard. I certainly went into the off week expecting that Josh Padilla would take the opportunities to supplant Tegra Shabola and get a start against the Nittany Lions. I don't feel that way. Now, I think that the door remains very much open to him. There's been rotation at that spot every single week. And maybe I'm a prisoner of the moment, but Tegra Shabola has certainly proven me and America wrong before during the college football playoff. And just seeing him putting in the extra work again, which he does not always do. Now, we're not there every single day, but I'm just comparing some Wednesdays to other Wednesdays that we get to see. Watching him in there be one of the last guys to leave the practice field, I took as a sign that he understands the situation he's in. This is the final stretch of his career, the final opportunity to make a mark as an NFL draft prospect, the final opportunity to be a leader and a starter for a national championship contender. And his job is under fire. And if he thought that it wasn't at some point in the last 2 months, and I'm projecting, that's not something that he said. That's not something that anybody else has said. It's just an objective evaluation of the situation. Josh Padilla is a realistic option to take his job. And if he's responding to that with more effort, more attention, we all know he's got the physical tools and he's also got the experience, and he has put it on the field before. The film exists of Tegra Shabola playing at a championship level. I think he's going to wind up playing more snaps in this game than Josh Padilla. Now, that may not sound like a very bold prediction because that's happened in all 7 games so far this year. But I think he's going to play well. I think that there will not be a sack allowed on Tegra Shabola's watch. I don't know what the run game is going to look like, to be honest with you. It may still be very similar to what we've seen throughout the first 2 months of the season, but if Josh Padilla takes over that job, I don't think it's going to happen on Saturday.
I tend to agree that you're going to get the best out of Tegra Shabola this week. And he's a guy that traditionally has played up to the level of his competition, or in some cases down to it from what we've seen throughout the early part of the season. He has been pushed to this brink before and bounced back in a strong way and did so in the playoff when he was hurting and had shoulder issues and things that were going on. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know you're normally the post Wednesday practice watcher, but I don't remember seeing him doing extra work before.
I wasn't going to say never. I know it's not a regular occurrence to be seen.
I don't remember it. So I'm not saying it's never happened, but it's not something that has stood out prior to this past Wednesday evening in the Woody. So I think it makes sense to say, hey, here's your opportunity. I like the way that Ryan Day talked about this on Wednesday night. He said that it is simple. It's not easy, but it's simple when you have to have these conversations about maybe changing starters or moving a guy out of the lineup. And I really think that that's smart of Ryan Day, basically saying that that's why we grade them. They know what's expected. If you don't, he said they make this as black and white as possible. And so, on the outside, fans, media, we're all looking for nuance and we're all looking for, feelings and psychoanalysis and all that stuff. But really it comes down to who's grading better on the field. And so I believe this is Tegra's chance to put this conversation to bed. I probably am on the other side of it than you. I don't know that it matters who plays the most snaps in this game. It's how those snaps are performed. Obviously, that will end up telling the tale.
Sorry to interrupt. I just think that, to me, that means that it's because I think Tegra is going to perform well enough that those snaps are still earned. Because I think this is a turning point. They've walked up to the line. The conversation about Josh Padilla existed on the very first day once they came back from Wisconsin. And the grades for him have been good.
Yeah.
They've been encouraging. So I think that this is the crossroads moment. I was going to call it the last chance when you were talking for Tegra Schwoll, but we know that's not the case because there's so much football that's left and a lot of things can happen. But like, I don't think that if I thought Tegra Schwoll was going to struggle, this would be the game where the leash would be the shortest and Josh Padilla would take over. I don't think he's just going to go back in by default. If Tegra Schwoll has struggled in the first 2 drives and Josh Padilla went in and they scored on 1 out of the 2, I think you'd have to stick with Josh Padilla. I think that is very much in the cards here. I'm basing this more on the fact that I actually think Tegra is going to respond and play well.
Yeah, I don't think it's a last chance, as you said. It is a defining moment, and we'll see how he responds. Because if you want to be a future NFL player and you want to be a draft pick and not a guy who's a undrafted free agent and bouncing around or next year for playing football, like this is where that money is made. If you think about Donovan Jackson heading into November last year when we were walking into Penn State at the first week of November, like imagine how much his life changed after that point. And now he, ends up being a first round pick, did all the things that he had to do. We'll see. We've seen Ohio State turn to Padilla. I do wonder, and this is a question that was actually posed to us on the at the Austin and Birm Show at gmail.com. Somebody asked if we think that there's a chance that Ethan Anianwa is on the same path as CJ Hicks and Malik Hartford. And I guess I hadn't thought about that, but I don't think so. But
he can't be. He had already played in 5 games.
Well, there you go. So, but it's clear that Josh Padilla is doing all the right things, and he's proving it on Saturdays. Ryan Day said Saturdays are the test. So, like you get all the materials, you get all the preparation through the week, and Saturday's the test. And in the last month of tests, Tegra Schwoll has not performed particularly well. So it's about how you perform on this next one. It's not about the last one. And I again, we've seen Tegra do it before, so it won't shock me if he ends up going out and playing his best game of the year on Saturday. But at the risk of riding both sides of the fence, it's not going to shock me either if Josh Padilla ends up playing 75% of the snaps.
Well, that's how I was able to talk myself into it being an actual bold prediction for something that's happened in every game so far. If you disagree, you can let us know. You can email us, as Birm said, at the Austin and Birm Show at gmail.com. You can watch us all week long on 97.1 The Fan, 10 TV Plus.
You can't watch us all week long. You can watch us at times.
We make a lot of content.
I'm just saying you can watch us at times during the day, but you cannot watch us all the time.
Okay, that's actually a fair point. I'll have to concede that when you're correct. You will be able to watch us on Saturday morning in the pregame keys as we get there and get the availability report and talk about our final thoughts before Ohio State takes on Penn State at noon. That is a Fox game, big noon kickoff. And afterwards, we'll have some snap judgments. We'll have the notebook and so much more, as you have come to expect from the Austin Birm Show. We hope you've had a great week. Hope you have a happy Halloween and hope you enjoy the start of November just for contenders. Ohio State starting it with one who isn't. That is Penn State. We'll talk to you when we get to the horseshoe. See ya.